shape study. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this panel discussion from Bone and Joint Care, Aster RV Hospital, JP Nagar, Bangalore. Today we are going to have two important discussions: safety of non-COVID patients coming to a hospital and arthritis care during this COVID pandemic. As we all know, this COVID-19 or SARS-2, COVID-2, what we call in medical terms, has been gone for a great pandemic worldwide, and many countries have been infected, and they are in different stages of this pandemic curve. India also is not less. We do have lots of patients in India. If you see worldwide, almost 6 million people have got infected, and 4 lakh plus people have died because of this infection. In India, almost 2.5 lakh people got infected, and almost 7,000 people have died because of this infection. I'm sure this has got a lot of stress on the people in the society. They have a lot of emotional, psychological stress on them, and people have started ignoring their non-COVID conditions because of the fear of coming to the hospital. I'm sure many of the patients who are suffering with non-COVID conditions like heart-related issues, hypertension, diabetes, liver issues, or kidney issues which require regular dialysis, they started ignoring this, or the fear of COVID is not bringing them to the hospitals. Today in this panel discussion, we'll try to enlighten you how each hospital has helped or trying to improve the safety protocols for the patients who are coming for non-COVID condition, so that patients can come here safely without any fear. So with this, I'll invite my colleagues here. With me is Dr. Rupa, who is Senior Consultant for Rheumatology, and to my right is Dr. Ravindran, is Consultant in Bone and Joint Orthopedic Department, and Dr. Philip, to my left, is again a Consultant in Department of Orthopedics, Aster RV Hospital. Today we'll try to help you and try to clear more and more of doubts and the fear in your minds. We try to eliminate that. So as we know, as I said before, many of them are suffering with non-COVID conditions, and many of them trying to ignore it or trying to be away from the hospital with a self-medication or the medication which the doctors have prescribed them previously, and they're trying to continue it. But these patients, as you know, have to come to the hospital for a regular checkup. So if they don't come for a checkup, we don't know whether the medication is working, whether the medical condition is improving or deteriorating. So in my suggestion, those who are suffering with chronic non-COVID condition should not have a fear in their minds. They should come back to the hospitals for the regular checkups. Aster RV Hospital is a part of Aster DM Healthcare system. Aster DM Healthcare as an organization has decided and has taken full care of all the healthcare professionals, especially doctors, nurses, and the support team which are working in the hospital for their safety, and also it's working very hard for the safety of the patients who come to the hospital, so that there is no cross infection within the hospital. So Dr. Ravindran, who is sitting next to me, will explain what are the protocols we are following when the patient comes to the hospital, so that there is no cross infection to the patients, non-COVID patients coming to the hospital and getting a COVID infection. So we are doing quite a bit of precautions, and Dr. Ravindran will elaborate on that.
So initially what we are trying to do is to reduce the number of patients entering the hospital itself, and we are asking one attender for one patient, one adult patient that is. As the patient enters the hospital, there is a screening, temperature screening and a saturation screening for the patient and the attender. Hand hygiene is done at the entry of the hospital itself. A triple layer mask is given to both the patient and the attender before they enter the hospital, with little instructions such as to wear the mask all the time as possible, and to maintain hand hygiene all the time. When the patient enters the hospital, the common touch points are cleansed with Virex solution, which is a bactericidal and a virucidal solution, and it is cleansed regularly. Now, the public announcement system in our hospital keep reminding everybody to maintain social distance. Social distance circles are mapped everywhere, like in the OPDs and in the lifts, so that people do maintain the social distance, and everywhere it is, the posters are put up regarding social distancing and wearing of the mask. Then there is a separate entrance for all the staff as we enter the hospital. Each one is screened again for temperature and for saturation. As soon as the staff or the employee of the hospital enters the hospital, we change into scrubs to keep the fomites that enter from outside the hospital to inside the hospital to reduce the fomites entering the hospital. And everybody is given masks so that there is a prevention of spread of any virus. And that's as much.
Yeah. So Dr. Ravindran has elaborated the safety protocols what we are following in the outpatient. As he's already said, there are two different entrances, one for the patients, one for the hospital staff. With the patient, we are allowing only one patient so that we don't crowd our OPD. If you see, Aster RV Hospital is a very spacious OPD space, so that there is not much of overcrowding there. We have enough space to maintain the social distance. And the common spaces like reception or the hand railings or the lift or all the areas where patients are moving around, we have made sure that it is cleaned regularly by antiseptic solution. And as far as possible, we have made sure the social distancing is maintained. We try to reduce the patients frequently going to different rooms or different investigation so that there is no infection to the patients. And then
Public announcement.
and we have been doing a regular public announcement, and if the patient is not carrying any mask, we ask them to wear the mask, we ourselves provide the mask. Make sure all patients are wearing masks. So these are the precautions we are taking in the OPD and the waiting areas so that there is no cross infection happening. Patients coming for the OPD consultation for a non-COVID conditions, they can comfortably come without any fear of having contracting any infection or a viral infection in the hospital. As far as patients undergoing surgery or any procedure in the hospital, we have set a safe protocols in the hospital so that they don't have any cross infection happening in the hospital. Like if they are undergoing any surgery or any dialysis or any procedure in the hospital, we have a safe protocol. Some of the protocols, Dr. Philip is there, he will explain what all precautions we take if patient getting admitted. For any procedure or any medical condition, if they get admitted in the ward, he will explain in detail how we are taking special measures to prevent any infection.
So, if a patient has decided to undergo surgery, we have to decide if it's either elective or if it is an emergency. If they're an elective patient, they usually come in 48 hours before we get a COVID swab done, which is then sent for RT-PCR. And we take precautions that the patient is not infected, and we proceed with the surgery. If it's an emergency surgery, yes, of course, we have to take that into consideration and we go on and we follow our protocols as we go. Now, any patient who once comes in for admission is only accompanied by one attender. We don't allow crowding in the hospital presently. So the relatives are not allowed, only one attender with the patient. The patient is taken into a room. Ideally, it's usually a single bed which we provide, or if they are using a double bed, then they have to be kept 6 feet apart or at least 2 meters apart of this distancing. All our nurses and all our healthcare workers are provided with PPE and with either an FFP2 or an N95 mask for their protection as well as yours also. And like Dr. Ravindra said, any patient who comes inside is provided with a mask and they are expected to use a mask. There is no allowing of crowding around in our areas, our waiting areas or such. And if there are people who are waiting in the waiting areas, our waiting areas are provided with HEPA filters to circulate the air and purify the air around that area. Now, once a patient is ready for surgery and they've undergone their pre-anesthetic check, etc., and we are ready to take them to the theatre, we have a special inpatient lift which takes patients to the theatre. The normal patients are not allowed to access these lifts. So a separate lift has been given. This lift takes the patient up to the OT level. And OT level is on the 8th floor, which is an isolated floor only for surgery. There, precautionary measures are taken. The patient's temperature is again monitored over there, and saturation is monitored. All our staff members are monitored through the day with their temperatures checked and their saturations checked. The surgical team is also provided with PPE and their masks. Once in the waiting room, patients are again kept separate. No crowding is allowed. 2 feet of distance is maintained. A patient taken into the OT, then the OT is, we have taken extra care in the OT to avoid crowding in the OT. Only necessary personnel are there. Even the equipment within the OT is minimized to only what is necessary, so that there is no extra surface for any of the viruses to form during some type of infection. Then the anesthetists take special precaution. They have their special face shields and respirator masks. Even our surgical team have separate respirator masks, which we use to protect ourselves also, because some of our surgeries could release these aerosols, and to control that, we protect ourselves with these respirator masks. So these respirator masks are either half masks or full masks which we use, and we also use a face shield to protect ourselves. The patient who is undergoing surgery, generally nowadays the anesthetists don't use so much of GA. We prefer regional or spinal anesthesia, because that would again reduce the aerosol disbursement while intubating a patient. So precaution is taken with that, and even the patient is provided with an FFP2 mask while they are undergoing surgery, so that they are not infected by any of the other sources. The OT is again cleaned down with ethanol usually, and even our air filtration system is HEPA filtered, and we have a laminar airflow which disperses any of the aerosol particles away from our working bench. Again, we use a negative flow type of system in our theatre, so it doesn't allow the air to flow out. Once the patient's surgery is over, we again, during surgery again, we try to minimize the incision. We are trying to do minimally invasive surgeries. We're using low-powered tools during surgery so that not to disperse any of the aerosols in case we are operating on any COVID patients. And once the surgery is over, and we ship the patient back to PACU, and from there we ship them back to the ward. In the ward, the patient is trained with their physiotherapy, and after physiotherapy, we discharge them as soon as possible to prevent any type of exposure, continued exposure within the hospital. Usually, we close also our sutures, etc., which we do without external sutures if possible, so that their visits for dressing, etc., are reduced, and they don't have to keep returning back to the hospital for repeated dressings, etc.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. Dr. Philip has given an elaborate explanation what all the precautions we are taking to prevent infection. Any patient coming for a procedure in the hospital, especially SRRB hospital, we are trying to give them the isolated or a single room as far as possible, irrespective of the insurance or the cash payments, because we don't want to mingle each patient with other patients to have a cross infection. Also, we try to reduce the number of attenders with the patient. We ask them only one attender, and we make sure the entire admission, pre-admission, in the hospital stay, in the operation theatre, post-operative stay, we are maintaining the social distance. And we also reduce the number of healthcare professionals coming to your room frequently. We just make sure 1 or 2 nurses only are catering you, and they are given a complete protection. FFPs are given, masks are given, including the healthcare, including the housekeeping staff. These are special equipment given so that you don't have any cross infection. Post-operatively, again, we try to reduce as much as possible the number of days what they stay here. We try to discharge as early as possible, put them into rehabilitation protocol as early as possible, make them walk, make them mobilize, and as far as possible, we want to discharge the patient sooner from the hospital. So these are the special precautions we are taking for all the patients who are coming in the OPD consultation, for the surgery. During the procedure, Dr. Philip has told so many precautions we take in the operation theatre so that the patient does not contract infection, or the patient is not giving infection to the healthcare professionals during and after the procedure. So we have done a lot of special measures so that patients can feel safe in this hospital. So these are certain things which we wanted to tell you to take the fear out of your mind so that you can comfortably come for non-COVID condition to Aster RV Hospital. Aster RV Hospital as such in principle is a non-COVID hospital. We don't admit any COVID patients. In case any patients coming with COVID-19, we are referring them to the government referral centers or our other branch that is in CMI, we are referring them. As far as possible, this hospital is kept as non-COVID hospital so that patients can feel safe to come to this hospital. Now coming to second very important, arthritis and COVID. I'm sure many of the patients are suffering with knee pain. It can be because of inflammatory arthritis, it can be rheumatoid arthritis, or it can be simple degenerative osteoarthritis. Theoretically, if you see, during this COVID pandemic, we should not be doing elective surgeries. As far as possible, we need to delay the surgeries. Because during COVID pandemic, we don't know how the patient responds, or in case patient is an asymptomatic carrier. That means we have done a COVID test, in spite of that if he is a positive patient, the post-operative period may be very violent or the complication rates are very, very high. I'm sure many of you would have read in the media or seen on the televisions about these complications. So as far as possible, we are trying to be more of conservative, wait for this pandemic to be over and then move on for surgery. So as far as conservative is required, you have been concerned, we all know that we give painkiller medications, physiotherapy, weight reduction and all. In this hospital, what we are trying to do is, those patients who are in severe knee pain, we are trying to give platelet-rich plasma injection, PRP injections, and stem cell injections for the knee joint so that we can push or postpone the knee surgeries. So as far as arthritis is concerned, like inflammatory arthritis, Dr. Rupa is sitting with me. She is the better person to explain how best you can manage your rheumatoid arthritis during this COVID pandemic, whether this COVID is going to affect your rheumatoid arthritis, and do you have to change the medication. I'm sure Rupa will start explaining you the special precautions which you have to take at home, and when you have to come to the hospital for consultation, and when you have to opt for video consultation. Dr. Rupa, you can go ahead.
So, first of all, it is important for anyone to know if they are at risk of, a higher risk of catching this virus. So, if anyone with arthritis, such as rheumatoid arthritis, the risk of catching any infection, let it be virus or any infection, goes high. On top, if they have any other medical problems such as diabetes, heart disease, lung or kidney disease, the risk gets added up. So it is important to know at what risk you are. And if you are at a higher risk, it is important that you try as much as you can to protect yourselves from this viral infection. So how do you do it? So you follow the basic general guidelines, that is to wear a face mask. So whenever you are getting out of your home or you're coming across anyone outside from your home, you use, follow frequent hand sanitization, washing your hands with soap and water for 20 seconds as regularly as possible, or use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Then the extra bit you have to do is trying to avoid coming in contact anyone who is ill or unwell. But it might be hard because some people can be asymptomatic. That is the reason we try to, we advise that better to come in contact with anyone outside from your home. Having said that, if you are having severe flare of your arthritis, it is important to seek medical help. So, how do we do it? So, there are facilities, there are arrangements that we have made in the hospital. So, either you can do a simple call to the hospital, speak to us, speak to any rheumatologist, your usual rheumatologist for that matter, and get their advice. Based on the information you have provided, the rheumatologist will be able to advise you what kind of a consultation will be better for you. Whether it is just advice over the phone to take any course of anti-inflammatory medication, or to go for something like a video consultation, or a protected visit to the hospital where you can be reviewed thoroughly for further management. Then regarding the medications that will be given to the patients with rheumatoid arthritis, they are called disease modifying drugs such as methotrexate, leflunomide, or it can be something called biologic medications. So there is lot of confusion about whether to continue with this or to whether to stop it, because these are immunosuppressant drugs. Basically, it suppresses your immune system, your body defense mechanism, which is meant to fight infection. However, the recommendation is to continue with these medications because it is found that the risk of you catching infection and doing badly with the infection is high if your disease activity is high. So, if you stop these medications, it will invariably increase your disease activity. So, it is advised to continue with these medications. Also, of course, you can always have a discussion with your treating rheumatologist to get more advice, because every patient is different, the circumstances will be different. So, coming to the how to help yourself, apart from continuing with this medication and contacting your rheumatologist or seeking help if needed, what else you can do? So, you can help yourself by boosting your immune system, apart from taking medication such as having a healthy, well-balanced diet, if needed, taking supplements of vitamin D, vitamin C, omega-3 fatty acids, doing regular exercises. It could be gentle exercises if your joints are really sore and inflamed, and also having adequate 6 to 8 hours of sleep daily to to have a good rest. So these are the measures you can do to yourself to help manage this. However, if the situation of the joints is out of control, it's better to contact and speak to the rheumatologist, and then based on the information you'll be able to advise what kind of a consultation will be suitable for you. So you can contact us for video consultation if you feel it is appropriate via Aster RV teleconsultation link.
To summarize what Dr. Rupa is telling, a patient suffering with rheumatoid arthritis is a high-risk group. They are high risk because these patients' immune system is low or immunity is low. They have very high chance that they can contract coronavirus infection. So that's why she is telling, as far as possible, rheumatoid arthritis patients who are suffering with rheumatoid arthritis or on treatment should stay home, take adequate measures so that they don't contract infection or meet any people who are having suspected to be having a corona infection. That is first point she said. Second, continue the same medication. In case if you have any complication with this medication or any flare-up of your arthritis, if joint pains have increased, your other symptoms have increased, that is the time you need to contact your rheumatologist on video call. Preferably video call, because we don't want you to come to the hospital and get a cross infection. So as far as possible, try to make a video call to your rheumatologist. If not possible, we can always contact this hospital. Dr. Rupa is available. To do a video consult. In case if you have contracted some infection or your joint pains is not improving or your medication what you are taking has caused some kind of complication, that is the time if your doctor on the video call says you require a medical help or you have to go to the hospital, that is the time you have to come out to the hospital. As far as possible, try to manage your arthritis at home by improving your immunity, continuing your medication. Don't discontinue any medicine till the doctor says. Please continue your medicines and be in constant touch with your rheumatologist. If not possible, have a video consult with Dr. Rupa and we take their proper advice. As I said, in these periods like when corona pandemic is going on, we don't want to do much of surgeries. We want to delay as much as surgeries. One technique we are doing is platelet-rich plasma, which we are giving to an osteoarthritic patient who are having a severe knee pain. I am sure this technique will give them 8 months to a year of pain relief. PRP can be used in rheumatoid arthritis also. First, Dr. Ravindra will tell how PRP treatment is given for osteoarthritis, and Rupa, you can tell a couple of points on PRP role in rheumatoid arthritis. Dr. Ravindra, can you tell in osteoarthritis?
Yes. So the process of preparing PRP and injecting it to the knee is a very simple process actually. It takes about 1 to 1.5 hours to prepare PRP. It is a simple process. First the patient's own blood is blood and collected about 10 to 15 ml of blood is collected. It is processed by centrifuge, and the resultant product contains a lot of platelets with plasma. About 2 ml of this platelet-rich plasma is injected into the knee. How it works is very simple because this platelet-rich plasma is very rich in growth factors, and platelet itself has many, when it degranulates, has many growth factors in it. It causes chemotaxis and anti-inflammatory reaction, so that the stem cells are migrate towards the injured arthritic part of the knee and helps in the healing process. The platelet-rich plasma is not only used in osteoarthritis but many different conditions like tennis elbow and plantar fasciitis, ankle, post-traumatic arthritis, and so on. That's about it.
Basically, PRP is basically our own healing capacity. We want to use that. We take your blood, we centrifuge, as I said, 10 ml of your blood is taken and we put it on a centrifuge machine. We increase the platelet concentration 3 to 5 times than the normal values. We know that platelet has a lot of growth factors which helps to grow the degenerated cartilage in the knee. So we take 10 ml of blood. It's just a OPD procedure. If somebody is having severe knee pain, he is not able to tolerate but he wants to delay a knee replacement, he can come to the hospital in the morning. We take 10 ml of blood and centrifuge it in the blood bank and get 2 ml of platelet-rich plasma and inject it into the knee. Patients get relief within 2 to 3 weeks, and the relief would be there 8 months to sometime 1 year. So platelet-rich plasma is a very effective technique which I have been using regularly for a patient suffering with severe knee arthritis, especially osteoarthritis, for a symptomatic relief. Also, PRP was used for hair fall. That is where the PRP was started off, and now we are using it for knee pain. And also PRP is used for many rheumatological conditions. I am sure Rupa will tell more about PRP's role in rheumatoid arthritis.
So as Dr. Ravindra has explained how PRP works or how does it help in arthritis. So basically it's the inflammation that happens in the joint, the lining of the joint. So PRP basically, because of the anti-inflammatory effect that it causes, it also temporarily relieves the symptoms of rheumatoid arthritis in the knee joint. As Dr. Ravindra said, it's a temporary solution, but it is a longer lasting one. It's much longer than even a steroid injection that we give for temporary settling of knee inflammation.
So thank you, Dr. Rupa. I'm sure PRP will be having a better beneficial role for many patients who are suffering with knee arthritis. Now many people are also talking on stem cells. What is the role of stem cells in knee arthritis? So stem cells, we have started the technique in our hospital, and we have been using this technique for some of the osteoarthritis patients, and the details and how it is done and the advantages and the procedure, I think Dr. Philip will explain to us in detail about the stem cell therapy in knee arthritis. Dr. Philip, can you tell about that?
Yes, I think now we're moving into an era of more regeneration than replacement, and we're at the early stages of it, and stem cell is actually allowing us to do that. So a stem cell is nothing but an undifferentiated cell. It's the youngest form of a cell, and it has the potential to take on any type of cell in different parts of our organ. So the various ways of getting it, the embryonic way, adult, that is from your placental form or from the bone marrow. And what we are doing is we are harvesting stem cells from the bone marrow, and we centrifuge it and make it into a potent form. This bone marrow is ideally taken from your iliac crest, from your hip bone, and after concentrating it, we then inject it into the part which is affected. Now stem cell, unlike PRP, can regenerate that part which is damaged. But the key to it is we are still in the early stages of stem cells. So we have to identify the problem much earlier. We cannot go into a last stage of arthritis and then say we want to do stem cells. So if you're in the early stages of arthritis and if you're identified earlier on, then there is a very good role for stem cells where we can probably even try to regenerate it. We did one of Sir's young patient who was a sportsman who had a femoral head which was starting to collapse. And for these young patients, the conventional form of treatment ends with the total hip replacement. And that's the only option, but we generally try to avoid doing total hip replacements for young people. And in this patient, we had tried it out and we got a fantastic result in that patient. And he was back to his sporting activities. So right now it is promising. Stem cell is showing itself to have a role, but we still need more studies and more things. But yes, definitely.
So stem cell, as Dr. Philip said, is going to be the future. We harvest the cells from your own body and try to culture it, try to replicate and multiply the cells and inject into the parts which are affected. But many government authorities have not yet given approval for this. The favorable results are coming, but we don't have a clear data on preparation, on the effectiveness of the stem cell. But very shortly we may be coming out with a standardized treatment for all these many conditions, all the arthritis with stem cell, and stem cells may be the future. So PRP and next generation would be the stem cell for knee pain and knee arthritis. So during COVID period, as far as possible, we try to avoid surgeries, we try to do more and more conservative. As Dr. Rupa said, continue your medication, take care of yourself, don't get infected, improve your immunity. And for patients suffering with severe pain, either we can give a PRP injection or think of stem cell injection if they can afford that one. Because stem cell injections are really expensive. So if they can afford, we can have a trial of this. These are different modalities of non-surgical management of knee pain or arthritic pain during this COVID-19. And there's one more thing, if you can elaborate about gout, few points on gout, patients suffering with gout, if you can tell. Dr. Rupa will be able to tell a few points on gout, patients suffering with gouty arthritis and joint pain because of high uric acid level. She'll tell a few points on it and then we can wrap up the show.
Okay, so the gout is, not everyone with high uric acid will have gout. However, if you have high uric acid and if there are triggers that the triggers can make you develop to have gout in the joints. So these triggers are like, dehydration. So if you are not drinking enough water, it can make you prone to have gout in the background of high uric acid in your system. So how do you get high uric acid? So it's a breakdown of a specific type of protein. It's called purine protein. So mainly you get it from eating red meat or seafood or certain processed food or high sugary drinks. So but whoever eats it need not get it, but it's if you are prone to develop gout, to have high uric acid, you will develop gout. Is basically inflammation in the joint again because of the irritation from the uric acid crystals that settles on the lining of the joint. So keeping yourself hydrated is the first thing you can do to yourself, and then addressing the lifestyle or risk factors that can make you develop or trigger the gout. So the certain lifestyles, of course, we have touched base on the diet. So avoiding eating red meat or modest intake, and then seafood, which is very well known to trigger or increase the uric acid level. And then certain high protein food can also make you develop, but this is not in all patients. So if you feel that you have had high protein diet and you have not had any gout attack, you don't have to avoid that, because it's the certain specific protein, the purine protein, that causes gout. And then this is very well common in someone who drink a lot of alcohol intake. Especially beer, can make you prone to develop gout or have a gout attack. Then the next thing is Obesity. Obesity is well known risk factor to have gout, especially in the background of if you have high blood pressure and diabetes, then it is a higher risk for your cardiovascular outcome or your heart health. Then apart from that, irrespective, some patients, irrespective of what they do with their lifestyle changes, they tend to have high uric acid, especially in those which the gout runs in their families. So in that case, we try with uric acid lowering drugs such as allopurinol or febuxostat. That needs to be taken regularly. They hardly have any side effects. It is well tolerated drugs. So we monitor the uric acid level, and then based on the levels we adjust the dose. So it can be very well controlled. Having said that, the treatment is for gout. Even without gout, having high uric acid in your system is not good for a longer outcome for your heart health. So even if you don't have joint problems, with the high uric acid, it is important to reduce the level, and be just with the lifestyle changes or with the help of the medication.
As Dr. Rupa said, gout is basically increased serum uric acid level. Our normal level should be less than 6 milligram per deciliter. If your level increases, what we call it's called hyperuricemia. Uric acid is high. If you maintain persistently uric acid high, you may have gout attacks. Gout attack means you will have joint pains, especially knee pain, foot pain, back pain, neck pain. Any joint can be affected. So it can be a familial, that is by genetics, your parents, somebody is having high uric acid level always, you may have a tendency to maintain high uric acid level. If you know the history, as far as possible, you try to reduce the levels, what your blood is. Second, dehydration. You have to drink ample amount of clear water, which flushes out the uric acid which is produced in your blood into the urine. So dehydration you should avoid, drink plenty of water. Third, very important, diet. You need to have a balanced diet. You cannot go only protein diet, no carb diet, or only lipid diet or keto diet. So this may affect your body. If patients are only on protein diet, especially dal, chana, moongfali means groundnuts, cashew nuts, peanuts, badam, paneer, dates, or you eat lots of eggs to build your muscle mass, or drink lot of beer, or a meat, red meat, it can be mutton, pork, beef. All these things will push your uric acid levels to high and then have a gouty attacks. People suffering with gout attacks or known to have high uric acid levels should have a balanced diet, reduce your protein intake, drink plenty of water so that you don't have joint pains. So this is what I can tell, and we try to put most of these points to help the people have to tell them that Aster RV Hospital is a safe hospital for patients to come here. Aster DM Healthcare as an organization has taken extreme steps for the safety of healthcare professionals, especially doctors, nurses, and the support staff in the hospital. Also for the patients coming to the hospital as a OPD consultation or for any procedure, they are absolutely safe to come to Aster RV Hospital for their regular non-COVID medical workup here. In case something is there, you can always email your questions or send a WhatsApp text messages to the management. We will be happy to take it on with that. Thank you very much.